Hello and welcome to another in our series of Biblical Treasures, where we chat to ladies from our church about the Bible and where they find encouragement, their own personal treasure. In this mini-series, we're discussing people from the Bible and asking ladies, who is it that has inspired them, encouraged them? Whose story do they admire and why? And I'm delighted today to be joined by a very good friend, June Hawke. Hi, June.
Hello, Emily. Good to be here.
It's lovely to be chatting with you today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your biblical treasure. But before we turn to the Bible, can we talk a bit about you? Now, many of the ladies in the church will know you as you've been a member of St Margaret's for how long?
We're in our 42nd year.
Wow, that's a stint and a half, if I may say so. So indeed, many ladies will know you and know that you're married to the extremely talented Malcolm, who plays the organ and is key in all things musical at church. You have 3 amazing daughters and an entire bevy of grandchildren. So, in trying to find out something about you that perhaps most people don't know, I'd like to ask you about your childhood. So, June, if you were to be transported back to your childhood, where and when would you like to go?
Well, I think the happiest time for me was during my primary school years. I loved school and I had a wonderful group of friends, and everything we did together was so simple. We used to play jacks sitting on the curbside. We'd count the cars, and there weren't many in those days. And we play with our skipping rope and a ball. We had lots and lots of freedom and lots of fun. It was a lovely childhood and I was really blessed. A very simple life.
I think a lot of the ladies will be able to resonate with that. Perhaps not sitting on the curbside playing jacks, but maybe they did, who knows? Anyway, let's get on to your biblical treasure. As we know, the Bible is God's word, and it is a book that is about God. His character is revealed all through the 66 books of the Bible. We also know that God used people throughout the Bible, real people like you and me, to teach us about him and his purposes for us and for his world. So, June, which person in the Bible has impacted your life as you read through scriptures, and why?
Well, just recently, it's definitely been Esther. And I've come up with 4 reasons why Esther. Number 1 is very simple. As Emily's already said, I have 3 daughters, and I always thought if I had a 4th daughter, I would call her Esther. So I like the name Esther. The second reason is that obviously in biblical times, it was a very patriarchal society, and men had a very important role, women a much less important role. And many of the books of the Bible are named after men. Obviously, there are other names as well, but there are only 2 named for women, and that's Esther and Ruth. And they're totally different women. Ruth was in the fields picking up the leftover grain for her mother-in-law to feed her. And Esther lived in a royal palace. They couldn't have been more different. And yet God had a role for each of them. They were important ladies, and they each have a book named after them. Back to Esther. She's become very important in recent times because our daughter, one of our daughters, has been responsible for all the music in her church during lockdown. And because she's been so involved, we've followed the services. And in January, she was invited to give her testimony. Now, she said one thing that I've never heard her say before. She said she thought her role in life, all she ever wanted to do was be a stay-at-home mum. Well, that wasn't going to be her life because she's now deputy head of a school, a primary school. And in September 2019, she was asked to take on the role of acting head as the head went off on maternity leave. Now, our daughter's very relaxed and calm and placid, so it wasn't a problem, and she was happy to do that. But then March 2020 came, and we all know what that brought for us. Even that didn't faze her too much because, as I say, she was a very placid person. But eventually, she found that she was getting a little bit stressed trying to sort everything out, caring for the the welfare and the safety of staff, children, the whole school. And she discovered during lockdown Lectio 360, which I'm sure some of you have come across as well. And on a particular morning when she had been feeling a little bit stressed with all that was going on. And on this particular morning, she was questioning God and wondering, why am I in this position? Why has all this fallen on my shoulders? And that particular morning, Lectio 360, she listened to, and the verse came from Esther chapter 4. And it was the one that says, Esther was brought to the royal palace for such a time as this. God had a job for her to do. And that brought such reassurance to our daughter. She knew that she was in this position because that's where God wanted her to do. And he would be with her and he would help her through it. And it was all the assurance she needed. And of course, everything went well and there weren't any problems. And so that was lovely. A very, very special verse from Esther that meant so much to my daughter and now does to me too. And the fourth reason is it suddenly occurred to me during lockdown, we at the church have been studying Daniel. And Daniel and Esther, it seems to me, had much in common. They both rose to high positions in society, both lived in the royal palace. Obviously, Daniel was going to interpret the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar, and Esther's role was to save the Jews. And if she hadn't saved the Jews, we may not have had Jesus, we may not have had the Bible, we may not have had our faith. So Esther had a very important role. And both these two, Daniel and Esther, were prepared to give up their lives for God. They would not compromise their principles. They would not compromise their faith. They stood firm and strong for God and for his will. And what I want to say to you ladies today is that you may not be in the fields picking up the corn as Ruth was. You may not be living in the royal palace. You're probably somewhere in the middle, as we are, and living what we call an ordinary or a mundane life. But wherever you are in that place because God has put you there. And if we are willing to listen to him and willing to serve him for his glory, he can use us and he has a role for us at such a time as this.
June, thank you so much. I think that is such a pertinent message for these times. I think this last year we've all been out of our comfort zone in places we've not necessarily wanted to be and doing things we've not necessarily wanted to do. But I think if we can trust that God has put us where we are to do his will, then it is an encouragement.
It is, yes.
So thank you for that message. I think that's amazing. And I would encourage any lady who's not really read all the way through Esther to read it, because it is a fantastic book and it is very encouraging. So thank you so much, June, for joining us today and for bringing us that message and your favourite book. And ladies, we look forward to seeing you next time at our next Biblical Treasure. God bless you. Thank you, June. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye then. Bye-bye, everyone.